Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Research Fellowship Opportunities at the National Institute of Justice, sponsored by the National Institute of Justice.
At this time, I would like to introduce Tammy Ferguson, Program Analyst with the White House Initiative on Historically Black Colleges and Universities.
Good afternoon, everyone. As she said, my name is Tammy Ferguson, and I'm the Senior Program Analyst with the White House Institute on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. On behalf of our office and our Acting Executive Director and Deputy Assistant Undersecretary, Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Our office is committed to connecting HBCUs and their students to federal opportunities and programs to ensure their success. One way we do this is through various outreach events throughout the year. This year, we are kicking off our first ever HBCU Back to School Week. This week-long celebration of students consists of virtual and in-person events designed to connect HBCU students to federal opportunities and agencies, as well as the committed staff that carry out their agency's mission. Our hope is that you will learn useful information that will help you shape your future career path, and that you will share this information with your fellow students and colleagues. For up-to-date information on our work with DOJ and the National Institute of Justice, as well as our 32 federal agency partners, please be sure to visit our website at sites.ed.gov/WHHBCU. While you're on our website, I also encourage you to sign up for our listserv to learn about more internships, fellowships, and other special opportunities available for HBCU students. For the social media savvy, please follow us on Twitter at WHI_HBCUS and tweet this event using the hashtag HBCUB2School. Again, thank you for participating today, and we wish you much success as you explore, grow, and learn during your educational journey. With that, I will now pass it off to Dr. Howard Spivak, the Principal Deputy Director at the National Institute of Justice at the Department of Justice.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with all of you. And I want to start by saying that our investment in career development opportunities is a very high priority at the National Institute of Justice, and enhancing diversity within this initiative is also a very high priority. So it really is a pleasure to have this opportunity. Just in case some of you don't know what the National Institute of Justice is, NIJ is the Research, Development, and Evaluation Agency of the U.S. Department of Justice. Some people don't realize that there is a research agency at the Department of Justice, but in fact there is. And the commitment to science driving practice and policy in criminal justice is considerable. We're dedicated to improving the knowledge and understanding of crime and justice issues through the use of science. In this webinar, there are a number of areas I'm going to be touching on, although briefly, but at least to introduce you to these areas. First, I'm going to talk about our graduate research fellowship programs. We have one in both science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and also in social behavioral sciences. Then I'm going to talk about the W.E.B. DuBois program on race and crime. Next, I'll be talking about our early career new investigator program, which is a program we actually just started in 2016. Then I'll be moving on to our visiting fellows program, and finally our research assistance program. Now, the goal of our graduate research fellowship is to support doctoral students engaged in research that addresses the challenges of crime and justice in the United States. There are two tracks, as I mentioned earlier. One is the STEM track, which is primarily the basic science track, and one is social and behavioral sciences. And we're now actually accepting applications for the solicitations for both the STEM solicitation and the social behavioral science solicitation, both of which are currently out and available. And there will be a webinar on October 4th to learn more about this solicitation as well. So I encourage if you're interested in registering for that October 4th webinar, where you'll get more details about all of this. Now, the STEM Graduate Research Fellowship provides $35,000 annual student stipend. That's up to $15,000 annually for tuition, fees, and research expenses, and up to 3 years of support usable over a 5-year period. The application requirements are that one is currently enrolled in a PhD program in a STEM field, and there's a proposed thesis project relevant to criminal justice. In this past year, we've made 22 awards totaling $1.1 million, and our expectation is that we'll be in that same ballpark in the upcoming year as well. The Graduate Research Fellowship in Social Behavioral Sciences provides up to $32,000 to support the final phase of dissertation research. So it is different from the STEM program. The requirements are that the applicant be enrolled in a PhD program in a social behavioral science discipline, and that students must have already completed their coursework, comprehensive exams, and must be advanced to candidacy. In fiscal year 16, so in the past year, we made 7 awards totaling about $225,000, and again, our expectation is that we'll be in the same ballpark for this. So there is a difference between the two fellowships. The STEM fellowship is up to 3 years. The Social Behavioral Science Fellowship is really primarily a single year and is more focused on the tail end of the PhD work as opposed to the STEM, which is more in the mid process of that work. I'd like to give you a couple examples of some of the fellowships we funded. We funded one related to the repetitive sequencing in the human genome, one related to forensic work around fingernails as evidence. So these are clearly examples of the STEM fellowships, but only 2 examples, and there are many broader examples of this. If you go onto the NIJ website, which you'll get the site for at the end of this presentation, there'll be a link to looking at other awards we've given. And then in the social behavioral science, 2 examples are, one is modeling the understanding of illegal narcotic markets. One is looking at women in prison and the transition from prison to home. Again, 2 examples of many that we've given over the years. Now, moving on to the W.E.B. DuBois program on race and crime. This is a program that's been in place for, I believe, about a dozen years, maybe longer, and it's to further the department's mission by advancing knowledge regarding the confluence of crime, justice, and culture in various societal contexts. The research solicitation looks or calls for proposals on the intersection of race, offending, victimization, and the fair administration of justice to both juveniles and adults. Now, there are 2 components to the DuBois program. The longer-standing one is the fellowship one, which is actually the bottom part of this slide. And this is focused on researchers who are early in their career and not tenured as yet, generally within 5 or 6 years of receiving their degree, although there's no specific requirement around that. But we're really looking to fund more junior investigators in this. And we provide up to $100,000 of funding for secondary data analysis projects and up to $150,000 in funding for research projects that go beyond just secondary data analysis, although they may include secondary data analysis as a component in the larger project. And as I said, this is the long-standing one. The second part of the program is something we just started in the past year, and this is focused on providing funding for more experienced and advanced scholars. And this is requires that people be at least 6 years post their receiving their terminal degree. So obviously, it's for people that are more advanced in their careers. As a component of this, while it's not required, it is generally encouraged that there be a mentorship component in these projects so that the more senior researcher actually has at least one junior researcher that they're working with on the project and mentoring in the process. This provides up to $500,000 or more for research, excluding secondary data analysis projects. So this is more extensive and comprehensive research efforts and not simply working with existing data sets. In the past year, we provided a little over $1.1 million in total funding for the DuBois program. That included 2 scholars grants for research on policing, traffic stops, and civilian review boards. And we funded 5 fellows grants on research on youth violence and immigration, restrictive housing and corrections, risk assessment and disparities in courts, and policing in LGBTQ communities. So again, it's quite diverse in terms of the kinds of things that we fund, but it's clearly focused on specific elements of race, gender, and culture with respect to crime. Some examples of past fellowship awards are 2 that are posted here. One looks at dispute-related urban violence among Blacks and Hispanics in urban settings, and one looks at the Arab American experiences with respect to crime and victimization. But again, these are only 2 examples, and I encourage you on the NIJ website to look at other awards we've given in this area because it's been quite broad. Moving on to the new Investigator or Early Career Program, this is an initiative that we started just in the past year. And it was specifically developed to give younger investigators the opportunity to apply to be principal investigators on grants, where they're not in competition with the more experienced investigators, where they're often closed out from receiving awards because they're less sophisticated in their grant writing. Now, that doesn't mean that we fund proposals that are not well written or that aren't well designed by any means, but what we've tried to do is remove the experience factor in the competition process to allow more opportunity for younger and more junior investigators. This is essential because experience is ultimately a factor in receiving funding, and so the more experience you have, the increased credibility you have in submitting proposals. Federal funding is hugely competitive, and again, it's hard to break into this when you're just starting out. And managing federal awards is complex and very time intensive, so we want to create opportunities for people to learn how to do this. The eligibility is pretty straightforward, and I'm just going to read these, and I have to say that we're going to get questions about this, but the answers won't change. You have to be a U.S. citizen. Last year we got many questions about this. That's not negotiable. You have to be a U.S. citizen, and it doesn't matter if you're at a U.S. institution. You have to have received your terminal degree no more than 4 years prior to your submission, be non-tenured as assistant professor, and not have previously served as a principal investigator on an NIJ award. Now, former fellows are eligible, former graduate research assistants are eligible, but you cannot have been a principal investigator on a regular NIJ grant. The research that is sought is primarily in the social and behavioral sciences, criminal justice and criminology, public health, psychology, sociology, so it is not limited by any means just to criminal justice activities. Criminal justice research is very multidisciplinary, and we are in fact trying to diversify the backgrounds of the people doing work under NIJ funding. It can also include law, economics, and STEM or physical sciences. The Visiting Fellows Program is specifically designed to provide experienced practitioners in research a platform to develop innovative approaches to solving criminal justice issues. Now, there are a number of benefits to this. There's residence at NIJ for at least part of the fellowship, giving you an opportunity to work with the NIJ science staff. So there's access to federal subject matter experts and criminal justice partners, not just in NIJ, but in other federal agencies. There's participation in a wide range of collegial work within NIJ and beyond. And the point is that we want to get people here to develop projects that result in capstone efforts that either establish a new line of inquiry at NIJ or uses an innovative approach to advance existing criminal justice research priorities. So this is very much different from the other activities we do here. Number one, because we're looking for practitioners as well as researchers to participate in this. And the other is that this is a particularly applied activity and exercise. Some of the visiting fellowship types are policy and practitioner fellowships, which are individuals with significant experience as criminal justice practitioners or involved in criminal justice policy, advancing the administration of justice in the United States. Research fellows would be individuals who have worked mainly on criminal justice issues in academic or other research settings, but by no means have their degrees or experience solely within the criminal justice system. And then we also are looking for potential partnership fellows, which would be a team of a practitioner and a researcher working together on a joint project. And again, I want to point out that we are accepting applications from individuals from different fields who are bringing a multidisciplinary approach to approaching criminal justice problems. The NIJ Research Assistance Program is an effort to recruit research assistants who are full-time graduate assistants during the academic year. So that would involve 20 to 25 hours per week and work within their assigned program officer on research projects which vary based on placements. Now, in this case, the universities are the ones who actually apply for the funding on the behalf of the students. So the university applies around a specific student, so it's not just generic, around a specific set of interests, but it's the university that actually receives the award on behalf of the student. Any U.S. accredited university or college may nominate one or more enrolled doctoral students, so universities are not limited to a single nomination. And the universities and the National Institute of Justice will establish an agreement upon the selection of the various awardees or grantees under this. Who can apply? U.S. Department of Education accredited universities and colleges can nominate doctoral students who are, again, U.S. citizens. So it doesn't matter if you're a foreign student or a foreign citizen in a U.S. institution, you have to be a U.S. citizen. That you are able to work in Washington at NIJ during the academic year, are enrolled in a doctoral program and in good standing, are seeking a full-time assistantship with a minimum of 1-year commitment with a potential for reappointment for a second year, and have demonstrated knowledge of science research skills with a desire to apply them in the criminal justice field. So your degree work doesn't have to be in criminal justice science, but does need to relate to criminal justice issues and agendas. Now, the benefits are considerable. Students will receive a stipend, tuition remission, health benefits, training, and travel funds that are placement-specific, the opportunity to work in one of NIJ's science officers or in the office of the director of NIJ, There are 3 science offices in NIJ. One is Research and Evaluation, which is the social and behavioral science area. One is the Office of Science and Technology, and one is the Office of Investigative and Forensic Sciences. It's a real career development activity for practical and applied research experience, where you can learn more about the research enterprise from a perspective of a federal science agency. And there's considerable access, increased access to criminal justice organizations, universities, professionals, policymakers, and practitioners on the federal, state, tribal, and local levels. Some examples of research assistant assignments have included undertaking the development of annotated bibliographies and literature and critical literature reviews, development and maintenance of a compendium of research studies around a specific topic area, development and maintenance of and measurement and study of databases, completing comprehensive reviews of data sets, conducting qualitative and quantitative intramural research studies, assisting with evaluability assessments, co-authoring peer-reviewed journal articles, NIJ journal articles, book chapters, summaries, research briefs, flyers, and white papers, and co-authoring and presenting NIJ-sponsored presentations and webinars. The last thing I want to touch on just briefly, and this is really geared to the more senior people that are listening on this webinar, is that we are extremely interested in continuing to expand our pool of peer reviewers who review for us our proposals that are submitted under various solicitations and give us recommendations and feedback on the quality of those proposals. We are particularly interested in diversifying the backgrounds of the people that are part of our peer review process, and diversity in all respects, from different disciplines with respect to demographic differences, racial and ethnic differences, gender, the whole spectrum of diversity, so that the input we get in the reviewing of our proposals is broad and represents different perspectives and different sets of experience. Diversity among peer reviewers is essential because the science of criminal justice serves an increasingly diverse population, and we also know that diversity in the development of proposals and in the review of proposals generally results in better proposals and better research and better work. So on this slide, there is a website, NIJ Peer Review at usdoj.gov. If you go to that website, you can sign up to be a peer reviewer. I'm hoping that many of you are interested in this. I will also say, for somewhat more junior folks, that this is a great opportunity to learn more about the quality and kinds of proposals that NIJ accepts. And so it gives you some insight into the kind of proposals that tend to be successful in being submitted to NIJ. On that note, I'm going to stop, and I think we'll be opening things up for questions.
Yes, just a minute, please. We do have our first question. Isn't the GRF SBS program requirements for when you grant the award or at the time of the application? I think it's supposed to say, what is the GRF SBS program requirements for when you grant the award?
I believe it's for when you submit the application. So it's not for when you get the award, it's when you submit.
Thank you for the helpful presentation. Could you please discuss the acceptance rates for fellowships, i.e. roughly how many applicants would you expect for each program?
That's really hard to answer because it varies from year to year. I'm sorry, I wasn't facing the phone, so I'm not sure if you heard me. It's a little hard to answer that because the number of applications we get vary from year to year. And the limitations really are partly based on the quality of proposals we get and partly based on the amount of funding we have. But the numbers I gave you in terms of the number of fellowships that we fund on an annual basis is pretty consistent. But the ratio varies based on the number of applications we get. Quite frankly, if people submit a good proposal that's well written and well thought out in terms of the science, and is something that where you can make a strong case that it will be an impactful project, that it will make a difference, then the likelihood of you getting funded is pretty high. We're looking to fund good proposals. We're not looking to eliminate things. We're looking to actually support people's careers and support good science, especially among people who are developing their careers. One of our strong interests in doing this is that we want people to do research in criminal justice. And we want to, essential to this is engaging people early in their careers when they're beginning to really think through more carefully where they want to end up and the directions they want to take.
For STEM GRF, is there a point in a doctoral program where a student is too far along to apply? Could a student who has reached candidacy still be eligible?
Yes. You have up to 3 years of funding, but you don't need to spend 3 years doing that. So if you're closer to completion of your thesis and your doctoral work, that's not a problem at all. So you have up to 3 years, but you don't need to do it in 3 years. You can do it in less.
I have a PhD in 2010, an MPH in 2016. Is the PhD considered the terminal degree, or is the MPH as the most recent? In short, am I qualified for the Early Career New Investigator Award?
No, I think the PhD is the terminal degree in this case. MPHs can be considered a terminal degree among researchers, but that's a second degree. So it really is the first terminal degree that you receive that is considered. Now, if you got an MPH and then got a doctorate, the doctorate would be your terminal degree because that would be a more advanced degree.
Are non-tenured staff scientists eligible for the New Investigator Award, or is this restricted to those in faculty positions?
It's restricted to people in faculty positions. So you need to be a non-tenured faculty track individual to be eligible to apply for that funding.
I'm going to stop for a second here. And just a reminder, if you do have a question for Dr. Spivak, please submit it in the Q&A panel, not the chat panel. The chat panel should be used for technical assistance. We cannot monitor both boxes. So please, if you submitted something in chat that is a question, please resubmit it in the Q&A panel. And I apologize. 1 minute, please. For visiting fellows, is there a specific amount or percentage of time required for the residents at NIJ of the fellowship, portion of the fellowship?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
For visiting fellows, is there a specific amount or percentage of time required for the resident at the NIJ for the fellowship period?
That is negotiable. You need to spend some of your time at NIJ. It could easily vary based on the kind of work and project you're doing. But we've had fellows who have actually been here full-time. We've had fellows who have been here in the ballpark of 1 week a month. I think that probably reflects to some extent the spectrum. This is not something that can be done totally from a distance. But we're pretty negotiable on that. We're looking for good candidates with good ideas, and that's really what drives this, and we figure the rest out.
On the SBS program requirements, can a student take optional dissertation-related classes/workshops if they have completed required courses, QEs, and be working on their dissertation? Also, is that a requirement to apply or for the anticipated time period of the grant?
I'm not sure I entirely understand that question, so let me take a stab at it. The funding that one gets under this award can be spent any way you want to spend it, for coursework, for salary, for any other activity related to the project. So there's great flexibility with respect to how the money is used. It can be used to take courses. It can be used to contribute to your tuition. It can be used for salary, especially during summer months. That's pretty open-ended. It's kind of something that you need to negotiate with your university, who is the recipient of the funding. But we're pretty open and flexible on that.
If I am a faculty member and my doctoral student receives a research assistantship, can I also work on his or her NIJ project?
I don't see why not. We really like when students have a faculty member who's actively involved in their work and is mentoring and supporting their work. That generally bodes well in terms of the quality of the work that's being done. It's important that students have strong faculty support in the work they do. One qualification, and that is that none of the funding can actually be used to pay the salary of the faculty member.
What is the timeline for the DuBois program and race and crime?
I don't know if I have exact dates yet, but the solicitation will probably be released sometime in early to midwinter. It will probably be on the street for somewhere in the ballpark of 60 days. It could be up to 90 days. We don't know exactly yet. It may depend on the timing, but between 2 and 3 months. The awards will be made sometime over the summer.
I'm trying to figure out this question here. Is it possible to know, I think they're trying to say, who the peer reviewers are who will be reading the grant applications for GSF SBS? No,
the peer reviewers are anonymous. And that's because we need peer reviewers to be explicitly honest with us. And so their names are not released. People are asked if they have conflicts of interest, and if they do have conflicts of interest around specific proposals, they generally do not participate in the discussion. They're actually not even in the room during the discussion. But you will not know if you submit a proposal who has actually reviewed your proposal. That's pretty standard. I don't know of any science agencies where peer reviewers are anything but anonymous.
Can you distinguish STEM and SBS with more detail? For example, I'm a graduate student in Family Studies and Human Development. I use secondary data analysis in addition to various statistical analysis. As a result, I identify with STEM and SBS.
There are certainly areas that bridge between the two. You'll have to decide which one you want to apply to. The STEM sciences tend to be more of the core sciences. The social behavioral science tend to be more behavioral. Based on your question, I would suspect that you're more in the social behavioral science category, but it's your call what you want to apply to.
Can you discuss applying to both the DuBois Fellowship and the new Investigator Early Career Program? I thought I had read that you cannot apply for both.
You can apply for both, but not with the same proposal. So they have to be substantially different. There's no reason why you can't apply to more than one of these, but what you cannot do is send the same application or essentially the same proposal idea to more than one solicitation. If that happens, you leave it to us to decide which one you'll be in. And I think you'd much prefer to make that choice yourselves.
What is the deadline for the Early Career Investigator?
Again, I can't give you dates yet. The solicitations are all going to come out in early to midwinter. They tend to be on the street between 60 and 90 days, which means they're due sometime in the early spring. The awards are made over the summer, but a lot depends on things. because the timeline for release of solicitations is, among other things, dependent on us having a budget, which is not, as you may know, always predictable.
For the Research Assistant Program, if the university receives the award, why does the RA work in D.C.?
The RA works in D.C. because a key component of the assistantship is working with NIJ staff. It's awfully hard to do that from a distance. In fact, it's really not possible to do it from a distance. So the university receives the award. You get the money from the university, not directly from us. But the assistantship is based at NIJ. Now, in that sense, the money can be used for anything from paying yourself a salary to covering the costs of living in Washington.
Can a person on the first year of graduate program apply for the NIJ Graduate Research Fellowship Program?
I think for the STEM they can. I think for the behavioral science, social behavioral science, they cannot. And that's because the social behavioral science is requires completion of all coursework, so it's essentially more towards the tail end of the dissertation. It's focused on the last year of the graduate program, of the doctorate program. For the STEM, the applicant needs to have a formal dissertation committee chair, and the committee chair must sign off as having accepted the dissertation topic. So the earlier that that's accomplished in one's doctoral program, the earlier one could potentially apply.
How much scientific background should be assumed in the applications, i.e., should it be primarily geared towards scientists or policymakers?
I think one's orientation towards science is primary in this. Now, the application of science to evaluating policy is one option in terms of proposals and proposal ideas. But these are not policy fellowships. These are science fellowships. NIJ is an applied science agency. So we don't fund policy development. We do, however, fund the evaluation of policy, and we do fund science that informs policy.
Can you be a graduate fellow while being full-time employed?
I don't know that that would be very possible. I mean, if you're going to be here, I'm sorry, this is a graduate fellowship?
Can you be a graduate fellow while being employed full-time?
Yes, a graduate fellow, probably not.
For the graduate fellowship, yes. I mean, if you're working full-time in your graduate program, this is part of your graduate program. So whether you're employed or not is not of our concern. For the assistantship program, you can't be full-time employed and do the research assistantship because you need to participate here 20 to 25 hours a week. So unless you're working nights, I'm not sure that would be possible.
Are legal residents working at a U.S. institution able to apply to the new Investigator program?
I'm sorry, read that again.
Are legal residents working in a U.S. institution able to apply to the new Investigator program?
No, you need to be a U.S. citizen. There's nothing negotiable around that.
Is someone doing educational policy research but utilizes a multidisciplinary approach, law, policy, criminal justice, social work, welcome to apply to the new Investigator grant program?
As I said during my presentation, criminal justice science is a multidisciplinary science. So whatever background you bring to this, as long as the work you're doing is relevant in some way to criminal justice practice or policy, then you can be as creative as you want to be there. And there are certainly education policy issues that are extremely important in criminal justice practice and policy. So you can certainly integrate and merge various things. We're quite interested in people who are able to identify those kinds of links and make a case for the perspective they bring to the work. So I would encourage you to think about that. I can't be any more specific without starting to get into specificity about your specific idea, which I can't do.
Is funding solely for PhD candidates, or can master's students also submit an application, noting that would possibly be a simpler project?
No, you have to be a PhD candidate.
Can you fund a practitioner conducting research on a topic they propose? I have a JD, I'm a former FBI agent, I'm also a peer reviewer for 2 DOJ offices, and studied statistics as part of my criminal justice undergraduate degree.
Yes, if an applicant for a research grant, your experience as a researcher, as well as your research idea, as well as your case that can convince us that you can conduct the research effectively, are the criteria for doing this. So you don't need to be specifically trained as a researcher. There are many people with law degrees and other kinds of practitioner degrees that are doing high-quality research. So that does by no means excludes you, but keep in mind that the quality of the science in the proposal will ultimately drive the likelihood of getting funding.
Are there any chances that a recent graduate from an undergraduate institution can apply for any fellowships if he or she will be starting graduate school this upcoming fall?
No, you have to be enrolled in graduate school, and as you've heard, some of the criteria require that you have approval of your dissertation and a variety of other things. So to do it before entering graduate school, you would not be able to meet the minimum criteria to be eligible.
Is there a funding limit for the early career program?
Yes, $150,000 total, and that can be for 1 year or more.
What is the time span between when you submit the application and the response time?
Most applications are due sometime in the spring, and awards are made at the latest by September 30th of the same year. And many of the projects will then start somewhere in the ballpark of January or February of the following year. The graduate fellowship awards are made sooner because we are trying to notify people before the beginning of their academic year so that it can apply to their upcoming academic year, but that's the only one that's on a fast track.
Would you sort a GRF application from a neuroscience PhD candidate using electroencephalography as a STEM project or an SBS project under psychology?
Number one, I really can't comment on the specific content of your proposal, but I would strongly suggest that you think about which one your project will be more credible in. You could potentially do it for either. I think it depends on how you present your work. And as I said earlier, there are certainly projects that could go to one or the other. You can't apply to both, so you have to make the decision at your end as to which one you think you're most credible for applying for.
Can a part-time doctoral candidate apply for the GRF SBS Fellowship? Also, does a person need to have an approved dissertation proposal prior to applying?
I'll answer the second part first. Yes, you need an approved dissertation topic before you can apply. I don't know that we've ever funded a part-time graduate student, although I don't think that would in and of itself eliminate you from consideration. If you're enrolled in the doctoral program, if you have an approved thesis and you meet the basic criteria, whether you're a full-time or part-time graduate student is not an issue for us. It's an issue for your program.
Do you have one solicitation per year for the Behavioral Sciences Graduate Research Fellowship?
We have one solicitation a year for all of the categories that that I've discussed today, we only have a single cycle a year. Some science agencies have multiple cycles. We don't. We have a single cycle a year. As I said, most of our solicitations are released sometime in early to mid-winter, are due in early spring generally, are reviewed and decisions are made in late spring through midsummer, and awards are made by the end of the fiscal year, which is the end of September. You need to meet deadlines. If you miss deadlines, there's nothing negotiable about that. And just as a caution, your applications need to be totally complete by deadline. We do not accept additional or supplemental materials once the deadline closes.
For the Research Assistance Program, how much time, sorry about that. I lost the question, but I can paraphrase. For the Research Assistance Program, how much time during the academic year will need to be spent in the DC area? Would time be split between DC and the applicant's home institutions?
As I said earlier, the expectation is that the assistantships are physically here at NIJ 20 to 25 hours a week. Depending on where you live or where your university is, you could certainly do some degree of commuting. It would be awfully hard to do if you don't live within commuting distance. But your work is here at NIJ. It's not at a distant site, because what's central in this is close collaboration with NIJ science staff.
Can graduate students be nominated by their universities for the Research Assistant Program at any point during their program?
For the Research Assistantship Program, yes, I think at any point. Yeah, no, yes, there is the application period, but I think what you're asking is, can you do it in your first, in any of the years that you're in your program? Yes. And we've had assistantship folks here who were in their first year of the graduate program, and we've had assistantships in nearing their final years of their programs. It really varies, and it's really up to your program and you.
When is the deadline for the Research Assistantship Program? When would it begin?
Guys, you can keep asking me this question, and you're going to get the same answer. What?
So we'll announce the positions in December-ish, and then we'll do interviews in March and April.
Oh, for the Research Assistantship Program, we'll announce people who have been accepted in December. We then go through a various set of interviews.
We announce positions available in December?
Oh, well, okay, I'm sorry. We announce positions available in December. We do interviews in late winter, early spring, and then decisions are made shortly after the interview process.
Can you share a little bit of information on the reviewing committees for the SBS or STEM fellowships, such as, will the people on the reviewing committees will their fields align to those of the application discipline?
Yes, the review panels are very multidisciplinary and cover all of the subject matter that is submitted. We generally review the proposals and make sure that our peer review committees have the expertise necessary to properly evaluate the proposals. There is a bit of a lag between the proposal deadline and the creation of the peer review committees to assure that we're able to put the appropriate committees together.
Does NIJ consider proposals that include funding fieldwork outside of the United States if that fieldwork contributes to the understanding of criminal justice in the United States?
Yes.
I'm seeing a lot of repeating questions, so I'll scroll until I find a new one. If a student is awarded the Graduate Research Fellowship, does that prevent them from applying for grants to fund the research they are conducting?
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't stop people from applying for other funding. Except, at least for other federal grants, if you have a graduate fellowship award, you have to declare that in your application. So the people you're applying for funding will know that you have funding from NIJ to their fellowship, and that's essentially to make sure that there isn't duplication in funding. But if you're trying to get funding to do primary data collection around your dissertation, and that's additional cost to what you're paying for through the fellowship, that would be perfectly fine.
I work for public defense and local government. I received my terminal degree in 2013. I'm interested in several of these opportunities. Are there any restrictions to working full-time in a practitioner position?
It varies on the solicitation. I think for the young investigator or new investigator, for the visiting scholar, that you don't need by any means to be in an academic institution. If you're applying for a graduate fellowship, then you need to be in a graduate program.
New investigator, you have to be at a university.
At new investigator, you do need to be at a university. And DuBois? I don't think so with DuBois. With the DuBois Fellowship, you don't need to be at a university. And certainly for the visiting scholar, you absolutely don't have to be at a university. We're looking for practitioner scholars. So I think that you need to review solicitations carefully and make sure that you meet the minimum requirements. And some of them will require that you're enrolled in and or employed by a university, and others do not.
Clarification on the social and behavioral sciences requirement. It requires being done with your classes. Does that mean being done with required classes, qualifying exams, and working on your dissertation at the time of the application? Or can PhD students taking optional classes still apply?
You have to be completed with your core work, as I said, but you can certainly be taking supplemental classes, but you need to have completed your basic requirements at the time of application, not at the time of award. If you haven't, your application won't be reviewed.
If a practitioner/faculty proposal is submitted, I assume this is for the visiting fellows program, would this include support for the faculty to integrate or embed with the practitioner's agency?
I don't see why not. I think, you submit a budget as part of your application. You'd have to justify how the money's being spent, but if there's a cost to being embedded in a practitioner agency, that's not an issue. I'm not quite sure what that cost would be. Yeah, you need to be able to come to NIJ at least some of the time. That would be negotiated out, but it can't all be done at a distance. It certainly can be used to pay salary, so if there's a salary cost to being embedded in the practitioner agency, that would not be a problem. That's pretty common in research practitioner partnerships, that researchers spend at least some of their time embedded in the practitioner agency. But you do need to also spend time at NIJ.
One thing before we move forward, we are running out of time, so we may not be able to get to all the questions that we have here. In addition, there will be another webinar on October 4th, and we will discuss the GRF program. At that time, you can ask some of your questions, and they will be answered in more detail.
I'll also note that up on the screen are a number of websites that allow you to get further information on the fellowship programs, on the Graduate Research Fellowship, webinar registration, and as well as follow-up for this webinar. And I'm going to go back. Can I go back? Yes. I'm going to go back to the slide for peer reviewers as well, because this is not on that summary slide. This is the website now up on the screen, NIJ peer review at usdoj.gov, where you can get more information about being a peer reviewer and also essentially submit your application to become a peer reviewer. And at that point, I'm going to go back to the final slide with the other website.
A couple more questions in our few minutes. Can a person who has received a reward from NIJ as a co-PI be eligible for the early career program?
Yes. You cannot have been a PI, but you can certainly have been a co-PI.
Are there preferences for qualitative versus quantitative research?
There are preferences for good science, and there's good qualitative science and there's good quantitative science, and there's not so good quantitative science and there's not so good qualitative science. You need to write a good proposal. You need to be thoughtful about your methodology. That is the major component of the scoring that you will get. So a good idea is great, and you get some points for that. A good, solid scientific proposal you get a lot of credit for. And the relevance and impact of the work you're doing is also important. So you can propose a wonderfully solid scientific project, but if you don't make the connection to impact and relevance to the practicing criminal justice, then it's going to be a tough road for you on getting NIJ funding.
What's the best way to learn more about NIJ's strategic priorities?
If you go to the main NIJ website, which actually isn't up here, but it's basically nij.gov, you should be able to link onto a variety of strategic plans that we have. We have a broad strategic plan for NIJ in general, and then we have strategic plans around high priority topic areas that will be available on our website as well, around policing, around courts, around corrections, and around a variety of other high priority criminal justice issues. So there's a lot of information on our website. There's also opportunities to post questions through our website that we can respond to.
Is there any exception to the one-year commitment to the Research Assistant Program? Could you be a research assistant for the summer?
No.
4 p.m.
At this time, it is 4 p.m., and we do need to end this webinar. We really appreciate your time and patience and interest in this subject. The questions that have not been answered will be collected, and we will do our best to make sure that they are answered and included in an FAQ document that will be posted along with the slides and the audio portion of this presentation. In addition, the information that is up on the screen for the contact information when these opportunities become available, you can reach out to the National Criminal Justice Reference Service, and they will work with the National Institute of Justice to address any specific questions you have at that time. Thank you very much, and that concludes today's webinar.